So without further ado, I would love for my esteemed panelists to come on out. Y'all don't have cool theme music like I do, though.
This is a deep sofa.
It is a deep sofa. Don't get sleepy. So
Kind of matches my shoes.
Speaking of shoes, let's go ahead and get this out in the air. Can y'all see Josh Carpenter's socks?
We had a pretty big announcement yesterday. I don't know if anybody saw that. Just making sure that everybody saw that it's a specific type of green here today.
So I'm going to ask each one of you to respond to this. This is the Level Up panel. So I would like for each one of you to talk about what you're doing to help Birmingham get to the next level. So Bill, we'll start with you.
Why do you got to start with me?
Because you're right here.
Well, I'm not really into tooting my own horn, so I want to talk about what my team's doing.
Perfect.
I think it started with really we made a conscious effort to build the company here in Birmingham, and that was actually easier than I thought it was going to be initially. So
no sweat.
That's a good thing.
Right.
But we spend our team spends a lot of time with other startup founders and other startup teams. We have people on our marketing team, for example, that have worked with other companies that have come out of Velocity and that are at Innovation Depot, helping them build out kind of their marketing platform and doing things like that. So that's a way to contribute back to the ecosystem. Another part is just we're staying in Birmingham, y'all.
Thank you for that.
We have a fantastic team here in Birmingham. We also have a team in San Francisco, and we've made the decision that we are going to hire as many people as we possibly can here in Birmingham. And I really want to thank Josh and his team for their support, the mayor's office, the state, the county. I mean, it's been really unbelievable, the support that we've seen. And I think that it's really a new era here in Birmingham and in our state. I mean, we've got people really supporting technology companies. And I said it yesterday, I hope that what we see here is similar to what happened with the auto industry when we recruited Mercedes here a few years ago.
Yes.
Look at what we have now in the auto industry, and I'd like to see the same thing happen with the tech industry here.
Right. Thanks. Ashley?
Yes. Well, hi, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm doing my best Meghan Markle, so okay, here we go. First things I want to say, I think Chris Moody said it earlier, like when you're an entrepreneur, you are obsessed with it, and because I'm a startup founder, I have to say these two things. Thing one is, I have a round open. Okay. Thing two is, we are doing a mixed rows demo over at lunch, and we gave out special tickets to like the first 50, 75 people. So if you got a ticket, come see us at lunch. So those are my two little plugs. But now let's talk about leveling up. So leveling up, I got the best example of this actually earlier today. So where are those students who are like in 7th, 8th grade? Where are you? Hi, guys. Okay, so the reason and the way that I'm leveling up Birmingham that I find is because those students that are sitting up there, they were aware of who I am. I've only been in Birmingham 6 months, but they were aware. It's so important for them to see someone that looks like them building something in tech. And so that is my reason for doing it.
And just for frame of reference, I think that's Dr. Adrian Starks in Stream Innovation. So
that's right.
Thank you, Dr. Starks.
That's right. Shout out.
I will promise you it does not take 6 months for people to know you're in the town. So you're very charismatic. So on the level up side, I sit in a sort of a unique position in that I'm a venture capitalist and have had the privilege of leading the Series A and Shipped and with Harvard. And then over the past year, we've been doing work with Innovate Birmingham that gives us sort of a new insight into combining maybe, venture capital activity in terms of deal structure around economic development on the technology side. And so it's been a really enjoyable year this year, combining those two approaches. And so one of the things that happened, and he doesn't like to, tout his own horn, but when we were going through the transaction with Amazon, we almost, when we were going through the transaction with Target, because the Amazon Whole Foods thing sort of tripped all this, right? And so once we knew that it looked like there was a deal that was going to happen, Bill began talking about how do we figure out a way to make sure that all the jobs that we've built, all the platform that we've developed stays here in Birmingham.
Right.
And so that started even before the deal was done. And then to the credit of Commerce and Jefferson County and the city and others like Alabama Power and UAB, they all came together and did a sort of a deal type approach to putting an incentive package together using existing incentives, but repackaging them in a way that met the needs of SHIP's desire to grow in the community. And so I think it's been a remarkable year, and a very fun year to see how the community has come together around this great entrepreneur and his great company.
Right. Thanks. Josh? Dr. Carpenter?
So I think I would just say, first of all, I'm honored to be on this panel with this great team, and grateful to Dion, who's doing a fantastic job leading Tech Birmingham. I think for me, leveling up is just trying to invite more people to the table. For so long, the way we thought about developing the economy in the city of Birmingham really hasn't worked for a lot of people here. We still have a 30% poverty rate. Almost 4 in 10 adults are not in the workforce. And so we had to think critically about the fact that we don't have all the answers. And so if I think we've done anything as an administration so far, it's that we're willing to experiment, and we want to experiment boldly with folks who also are willing to take on new challenges. So, the mayor said yesterday when we announced that SHIP was staying, we had to take a hard look at not only our incentive packages, but the way that we were opening up government to companies, particularly startup companies like SHIP. And so we had to produce a whole new plan that was more forward-looking, focused on a more inclusive, sustainable economy that was human capital focused. So the mayor was elected in October on putting people first. And so what we tried to design was a putting people first strategy that invested money not in land or in equipment, which may depreciate over time, but in people. Because the reality is that each of you, the skills that you've acquired, the 7th graders that Dr. Starks is working with this summer, that skill set, those skills that you're investing in, they compound over time. They don't depreciate. And so what we wanted to do was design a system that put a flag in the ground as a city government that said we want to be innovative, we want to work with companies, we want to co-invest in their innovation. And so our goal really is to invite folks like y'all into the tent to help advise us, to help show us the way forward. And I think if we've done anything useful so far, it's because we've brought together a non-traditional audience into government to say that actually government is best when it's made up of citizen volunteers. And so we've learned a lot from folks like Dr. Hood. We learned a lot from folks like Bill and Bob, and certainly Ashley, who was with us to help us get our budget over the hurdle. And it was the first time we'd passed the budget before the fiscal year began in about a decade. So that was exciting. But I think for us, it's about inviting new people into government and saying that we can do this better.
So we've talked about retention. Each one of you mentioned it. So let's talk about retention. So what are the lessons learned? We'll start with you, Josh. What are the lessons learned from the SHIP deal? And how can we be more proactive when we know large companies are probably looking at Fleetio and Influence and Theranet? So how do we start being a lot more intentional about when those exits do happen, and we want a lot more exits, to make sure that those companies stay here?
I think it starts with asking Tony at Fleetio and Shagan at Theranet, what is it that you need from us? How can we be your best partner? And how can we convey that sense of urgency and pride, that mix of a real earnest desire to keep you here, to keep those jobs here? And then how can we roll up our sleeves to truly co-design a strategy to keep you here? I think that's our biggest strategy, is to say those companies are valuable. They are to Birmingham precisely what Mercedes was. And although that deal wasn't necessarily, let's go recruit this company here, it's about recognizing the immense potential of these companies and the fact that it's an ecosystem, right? I mean, if Bill does his job right, the folks that are coming to SHIP won't just stay at SHIP, and he wants them to do that. He wants them to learn at SHIP, he wants them to grow at SHIP, and then he wants them to create another business in Birmingham. And that's how we innovate Birmingham.
Mm-hmm. Bill, you want to speak to that?
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. It was on my mind. And one of the things I want to share today is, one of the things that's fantastic about Birmingham is people here are loyal and they stick around, versus other parts of the country where, you might only keep somebody for a year. But I also want to encourage people here not to take that too far. We need liquidity in the talent here, okay? So what that means is, 3 or 4 years as a startup is like 10 or 15 years at another company. And if you have people that are coming to apply at your business and you say, well, gosh, they might only have stayed here 2 or 3 years. If that was at a tech company, that is a long time. And that is not a negative. I feel like it's sometimes viewed here, it's a negative not to stay at a job for 7, 8 years. I think it's a negative to stay somewhere for that long in some cases. Mm-hmm. So it's something I want people to think about.
Mm-hmm. Ashley, you guys can be anywhere, but you came to Birmingham, went through Velocity. So can you talk about the differences of starting and scaling a company in Birmingham versus other places, and then the same issue about retention of a company like Mixtros?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, I co-founded a business with my mom, who's here, Carrie. Hello. Hello. All of you should imagine what working with a parent's like, and then just come, give me blessings over lunch, okay? So we started our business in Nashville in 2016, and let me just say, when we started this company, we saw a need, we saw a problem, identified it, and then we were like, okay, great, we can't find it, let's build it. And then we entered this crazy road of entrepreneurship. I actually read an article on the way here today that said the largest portion of people who are entrepreneurs have a mental disease. And I was like, awesome, I definitely, yeah, 100%. So, now we're on this journey, and so our journey started in Nashville in the Southeast. Obviously, Nashville is growing, at an astounding rate. Today, I am actually on the board of Nashville's Entrepreneur Center. My mom is on the board of the Nashville Technology Council. But if you've met me, one thing that I say, and I will say this until I am blue or any other color in the face, it took us in Nashville a year and a half to make the same progress that it took us 13 weeks to do in Birmingham. Think about that for a second. So currently, for my business, all signs point to the fact that I need to be here. And the reason that I think that it's working so well, from all the different ecosystems we've seen, and we've been to Atlanta, Nashville, Chattanooga, all those big startup ecosystems, but I think the thing that is working amazingly well in Birmingham that I have not seen anywhere else is the way that civic works with corporate, works with the tech ecosystem. When those three things come together and they actually want to work together in a partnership, it is magical. In a lot of other ecosystems, and I can speak best to Nashville, we have a lot of oversaturation. We have so many different entrepreneurial organizations stepping on each other that it stunts the growth of entrepreneurship altogether, and people fall out of the pipeline, and people with these great ideas will just kind of die on the vine because they don't get the support that they need to actually move forward. And here in Birmingham, we have felt it. Of all those, of all the logos that y'all have in the skyline, again, I've been here 13 weeks. I would confidently say 50% of those are now a client of Mixtros. And quick shout out to Alabama Power, if any of those people are in the house.
When are you moving here?
When I close my round of funding, but we are looking to become residents of Birmingham. It makes sense to, I tell this to every entrepreneur. If you are an entrepreneur sitting here and you are new or whatever the case is, go where people feel you. Do not stay where people are telling you you're nuts. That makes no sense. That's nuts. There's a lot of world, there's a lot of places. Birmingham is an awesome one, and for Mixtros, go where people feel you. It's here.
Great, thank you. Just a point of privilege. You guys really ran lean, and you're still running lean. Tell us about your living arrangements when you're here in Birmingham.
Okay, so I'm gonna make this Very long story, very short. My mom and I, when we go to tech conferences in general, we stick out. So we went to a big conference last May, and we decided to have T-shirts that said, "Black female founder fund me," because people weren't figuring out why we were there. And that article led us to get our first article in Forbes. That article led us to pitch in a competition that sent us to Denmark, and we won that pitch competition. I'm saying that article, I mean that shirt. That shirt led us, the executive director of Velocity happened to walk past our booth at that conference, and 6 months later she said, "I remember you. I've been following you on Facebook. You should apply for Velocity." And we did, and we got in. And so in January, we moved to Birmingham, and I personally, I came from New York City. I literally have New York tattooed on my wrist. I guess I'm gonna have to get a Vulcan now, because like this just seems like it seems like it's meant to be. But my mom and I moved into the TJ Tower. My mom is so, I don't wanna say cheap, but like she's cheap, like, oh my God. And she was like, "We're not getting a 2-bedroom apartment. Like, we're gonna make it work in one." Okay, fine. So we're in a 1-bedroom apartment, no problem. She gets a queen-size bed. Like, what? So like, literally, I work with her all day, then come home, then go to sleep in a queen-size bed. So I like roll over and I'm like, "Morning." Like, I mean, so crazy. But like, this is like the entrepreneurial life. The struggle is real. I will say, when we won Rise with the Rest, Steve Case got wind of this, and like one of the last things he said before he got back on the bus was, "Go ahead and get 2 beds."
I feel like we should pass the hat right now.
So, Bob, you've been very instrumental in really bringing a lot more attention and interest from venture capital, particularly outside of Alabama. Can you speak to some of your efforts there?
Yeah, so I think Josh mentioned it earlier, or maybe Bill, but the investors who are invested in these deals do have some influence on, where companies go and helping companies use retention strategies and incentive strategies, because it's non-dilutive capital. And so for investors, that's great. That's the best kind of capital, right? And so one of the things we did this year was we had an investor gathering that we just brought a bunch of investors from around the country to Birmingham that hadn't, because we're not on most of the investors' deal flow circuit. And so this was prior to the Shift announcement. And so, but they were surprised at what they saw. And then after the Shift announcement, as we've been working on Innovate Birmingham and working with Josh and the BBA and the EPA and other folks in the economic development community, we started thinking about, okay, how can we become more intentional about leveraging venture capital to create value in our market? So we want 2 things, right? We want capital deployed and invested in Birmingham. But in order for that to happen, you've got to make sure people are aware of the companies that exist here. But the other thing about economic development that's interesting from a venture capital perspective is that the resident industries and corporations of the Birmingham market are really a key hinge on our ability to drive entrepreneurship. Those organizations, particularly where we have density in healthcare, fintech, advanced manufacturing and automation, those are areas where if you can find a big problem, then the big idea to solve it, which is what entrepreneurs do, can begin to be directed maybe. But on the other hand, economic development is about recruitment of venture-backed companies and talent to the market. And so recently, we did a 2-step process where we invited 6 venture capital firms from around the country to come and pitch to the Alabama CIO Leadership Association. And those guys have been great. They've been very transparent about why they don't use startups, why it's difficult for them because of their procurement processes to access startups. Startups sometimes don't have the scale and the size that can meet the demands at scale. And so we said, okay, what if we brought some companies in from outside of the market to present to you? So we invited venture capitalists to come over and pitch their portfolios, not their firms or their funds, and it went really, really well. And so there were 11 companies that those folks selected that we brought the CEOs and biz dev people of those companies into Birmingham yesterday and had commercial development interactions with them. And so my thinking is, and I think many of the people in the economic development world agree, that if you can begin developing commercial relationships, then venture capital begins looking at the market differently. And then companies that are that have customers in the market, we have the ability to begin recruiting those companies for relocation, particularly if we put the right incentive packages together.
Gotcha. So all of you guys have a lot on your plates. Josh, I know you got a lot on your plate. You got smart cities, you got opportunity zones, business licensing. What are you most excited about, and what do you think is going to move the needle most? What are you most excited about what's on your plate?
I think I'm most excited about, and I do not mean to sound ageist in what I'm about to say, but I'm most excited about a group of invigorated younger folks who are attacking problems with this sort of relentless vigor of someone who believes that they're in the dynasty of purpose, right? So, when my office is in Bull Connor's old office, and the first time that I walked in and realized that, and someone just said it to me in passing as they handed me the key. Oh, by the way, this is Bull's old office. I was overwhelmed, and but it's impossible to be in that place without thinking through all the people who have not just sat in that chair, but in others who have carried a very strong sense of purpose. In that era, it was Fred Shuttlesworth, right? For every Bull Connor, there was a Fred Shuttlesworth. And so one of the things that I try to think about is that there's a new era of builders and makers in Birmingham. And I think we are with some of them on the stage today. And it's a real privilege for me to feel like there's a lot of people who are connecting to that purpose. There's a book by Aaron Hurst called The Purpose Economy. And essentially what he says is there's been, we're in the middle of the fourth industrial revolution. You had the information economy, which everyone knows about, and its headquarters were in Silicon Valley. Obviously, you had the industrial economy. It's headquartered in Detroit, and the agrarian economy, which is headquartered in, basically the rural South. And this new purpose economy finds itself where knowledge is ubiquitous. So you could go find it wherever. You could be in a coffee shop in Mozambique, or at an office space in Albuquerque. But what makes places important then is the extent to which they drive purpose and people. And that mutually reinforcing effect of finding people who share a common set of values and purpose, they collide more frequently. And so I think that is what is motivating me. It's what sustains me. And I find flickers of that literally in all of our work, whether it's in thinking through how we're going to revitalize and find new meaning in old spaces in downtown Inslee, or going into the John Hand building where there once was a bunch of bank tellers and ties, and now there's a bunch of coders and T-shirts. It's a really inspiring place to be, and I think that interacting with the different sets of people who make up that sort of constellation of our community is really inspirational.
Bill, what's next for you?
I'm doing what's next right now.
Going on a speaking tour? Like what?
No, definitely not. I'm really focused on building out Shift. It's early days for us. Yeah. It's still day one for us. So we have a long way to go. And I'm also really motivated and interested in helping Birmingham grow, helping the tech ecosystem grow here in Birmingham. I'm really excited about that. It's something I'm very passionate about.
Yeah, thanks. Ashley?
Yeah, okay, you want me to say it again? Closing the round of funding, one more time. And I should let people know, if you're not aware of the stats, why that is so significant. And of course, when my mom and I started this journey, we weren't trying to hit any milestones. We weren't even aware of the fundraising process. The closest I had been to it was seeing the movie The Social Network, really. So my mom and I are raising around, and if we close this particular round, we will be the 35th and 36th black females to ever do so at the amount we're raising. Think about that. In history. That's crazy. That's crazy. And I'm hoping that some of these young men and women who are black and brown, sitting right up here, they'll be right following me. I'm hoping that they see it and then, they do it themselves. But what I'm most excited about is we've been in this startup, this very early, startup phase for a long time. And literally everything that we've done at Mixtros has been done with a team of 2. So I'm excited to, have this opportunity to grow here in Birmingham and be part of the economic development that's happening here. Like, how amazing, it feels to be able to give someone a job, like an opportunity, a career, so that they can learn and then go on and do something else. That's amazing. And I'm excited to not only hire those people, but learn from them as well. Because again, like, my mom and I, awesome team. Our personalities are quite complementary for this, but like, we need some space in between, I think. I love you, though.
Too bad.
Bob?
So what's next?
Yeah.
So Innovate Birmingham was established as an initiative. There were two components to it. There was a workforce component that Josh led early on and is now led by Haley Kendrick, who's doing a great job. And that component of Innovate Birmingham on the workforce side is going to continue to create value over time. Our job on the economic development side was to assess, evaluate, and recommend to the city how we could build a more robust, sustainable, tech-based economic development strategy. And so we've developed a blueprint for that. Our work is winding down, and so we'll be finished with that work probably at the end of July, and then we have our last board meeting in the early part of August. So it's been a very, I think, good 15 months for our team. We've done a lot of good work. First of all, I want to thank Josh for two things. One, the support he's provided, and also for finally recognizing that I'm an invigorated young person. Thank you for that. It's about time. It's taken me all year to get you there. And I do think that we're living in an historic moment in our city. Our new mayor is not only inspirational, he's effective, and he's the real deal. He's a leader that really can get things done. I think with what's happening with the shipped exit, that's really turned the corner for Birmingham in terms of the way the world and the nation looks at us as a tech market, with people like Ashley coming into Birmingham and literally just taking it by storm, but in a way that she's got a lot of value that she's bringing, and she's a highly investable CEO, as is her mom. And so I hope that we get you to that million and beyond. What's next for me is I've been given the opportunity to run the American Cancer Society's new $100 million Bright Edge Venture Capital Fund. So it's an impact fund. It's going to be a really new approach for me on the investing side, but that's what I'm going to be doing next.
Awesome. Give our panelists a hand. So I actually have about 8 more questions for my panelists on my phone, but I told myself I was going to leave 15 minutes for Q&A. So I will open it up for Q&A. I think we got some runners. I don't know if they need to come and get these mics, but if you have questions, please raise your hand. If they're not in questions, I'm going to go back to my phone and start asking more questions. So we have a question here. Do we have somebody with a mic? We got a question
Right
here,
here.
and then a question back here.
Hey, Bill, Kevin McClendon, I actually have a question for you. Did you know Ashley has a round open? Can you help her out with that?
Bless
Well,
you.
She has a plan. Hit me
Perhaps
up
you've
after
heard.
we get off stage.
Make her 36. Let's do it.
Look at that. I'm like, who's? Yes.
That needs to be higher number 3 for me.
Hello.
Right?
See me after.
We have a question here in the back,
You got one up there.
Mike's coming your way.
and then we got this guy in the middle next.
I guess this is kind of a comment question. I think the first thing is it's refreshing to kind of hear in this kind of, not just ecosystem, but in this city, to hear people comfortable saying diversity is a positive value. And I applaud that, and I think that that needs to be driven home more. Dr. Carpenter, to hear you talk about the Bill Connor scenario and how you felt experiencing in that, and the idea of what that office is being used for now compared to what it was used for in the past. The question I have kind of relates back to a question I asked earlier about education. How can you all, and can this kind of process, particularly with Level Up and with some of the kinds of things that we're trying to do in Birmingham to innovate and to get people involved, how do you make sure that you include people from every community and demographic, especially young people? So I think that the greatest resource this city has is the minds of our children. And we're losing too much of that opportunity when children get to high school and they read at third grade level, because if you can't learn to read, you can't read to learn. So how can you all play a role in helping to make that happen in terms of taking advantage of every resource from every community and demographic in the city?
Yeah. So first of all, I admire your passion. My first job out of college was as a teacher and a football coach and baseball coach in rural Alabama, Perry County. And I experienced the pain of what I would call just low expectations. When I had 55 seniors, and I asked them how many of them had taken the ACT, and only 3 hands went up. And or I said no hands went up, and then I said, how many of you have heard of the ACT? And only 3 hands went up. And I think that's the danger that sometimes we fall into, even in our community in Birmingham, that we don't expect enough of the talent that's in our communities. But Innovate Birmingham, which Bob mentioned earlier, Innovate Birmingham was founded on a simple philosophy that talent is distributed equally in our community, but opportunity is not. And so we have to think hard and think critically about the ways in which we construct access points and pathways into these high demand jobs that we're celebrating here today. I'm happy to say that I don't think it's all on the public sector. In fact, I know it's not all in the public sector, and if it were, we'd be in trouble. The reality is that the private sector and the civic sector are arm in arm with us on this, and we're not the only community that's tackling this challenge alone. I do think that we have some new tools in the tool shed that I'm excited about. One is a partnership with Apple called Birmingham Can Code, led by Dion and Tech Birmingham. Several of us went to Chicago and met with the team there, and they said that we were able to do basically in about 2 months what Chicago did in 2 years in bringing the right stakeholders together. So I think there's a real opportunity to build that multi-generational awareness and education. The other piece is this new Tip Tap Top program. We're really proud of it. You can tell that I was an English teacher. Tip Tap Top, got to use acronyms to make things memorable. Talent investment program, talent acceleration program, and talent optimization program. 2 of those programs are specifically designed to make our economic growth broadly shared, to ensure prosperity and inclusion. One is the talent acceleration program. That, big companies like Blue Cross Blue Shield or Alabama Power or even UAB, they have something called a tuition assistance program, which essentially sets aside money so that an employee can go upskill. They can go finish their degree and move up the employment ladder. This program does that with our startups, and most notably and most recently with Shipt, it allows some of their entry-level folks to work with the Shipt leadership to understand what skills they need next to move forward. The talent optimization program also does that in one way by developing funds to train managers, which we know is a gap based on some of the labor market analysis that's been done here. And it also encourages them to think through how they can hire local, so hiring graduates from Innovate Birmingham. So I think that we have some tools in the tool shed, but I think what has to be true too is that if Birmingham is most passionate about solving that problem, we can be the quickest to do so. What I say about Birmingham a lot is that we're small enough to develop a solution and move the needle on some issues with relative speed, but we're large enough to present a scalable solution to other cities around the country. There's no one who would say that they have this figured out. But I think if we are willing to try things, admit when they fail, and really understand, I think Minsak Pak earlier this week said, you got to fail to scale. I think we have to be very honest about where we're not being successful. And so as a community, one of the things that I try to say is, sometimes we can come to these events and it's really sing-songy and we talk about how great everything is. And the reality is that that's not felt for many of our citizens. And so we have to dwell on that tension of we can have real pockets of success, but we also have to understand that if we're an effective community, we think about those who are least advantaged, those who have the most struggle. And so we have lots of problems to figure out, but I think if we take the types of innovative approaches that we've thought about here today and translate that to some of our bigger, more pressing problems like education, we have a real shot at solving them.
Like I said, you have your hands full.
Yeah, and one thing I would add is that just because you have tools in your toolbox, if you're not intentional about using them, then nothing happens, right? And so one of the things that the mayor has done with this Birmingham Can Code is he's allowed people like Dr. Lisa Herring with the Birmingham Public Schools and to work with Dr. Perry Ward at Lawson State to create real programs that are beginning to launch that kids and young people this summer even are beginning to learn how to code. And so it's that kind of intentional approach that I think the leadership of the mayor's office is driving today that's going to help us create results. But it has to be intentional, and I think to your point, it's tactical at some level. You know, you can have a strategy, but a strategy has to be executed in a tactical fashion.
Wait, last thing on that. So to say that everything that they're doing is true, I can be the confirmation of that because of what happened with Birmingham City Schools and Apple, them being intentional. Mixtros has met with Apple, and Mixtros will be meeting the diversity inclusion chief at Apple, who likes Mixtros.
Hey.
So there's it all in action.
Do we have a mic? We had a hand right here.
Hey y'all, I'm CJ. Without getting too far in the details, myself and a handful of others have an idea for an app that can leverage the foodie scene that we have here in Birmingham, that we feel like we can replicate not only just here or the Southeast, but across the country. We feel like it could have an impact in the economic development area, not only here, but really everywhere. If you were me looking for VCs, people that want to invest, advice, or anything like that, where would you start?
So, have you started to build it yet?
A little.
You got to go do it, man. I mean, you're going to have to go and start building this thing before you're going to be able to get capital. That's just real. It's very hard to raise money if you haven't started to build something yet. So, I would say if you have the idea, you know, can you pull together $10,000-$20,000? You know, from friends and family, or charge it on a credit card or something to just build the first version of it so you have an MVP, and then you can go out and raise capital.
And that's very true, because that's the scenario that my mom and I were in, and just because nobody ever talks about the timelines that it actually takes to do this. People think like you wake up with an idea and then it's like, oh, I'm about to go get some money. No. We came up with our idea in 2014. Because we are non-technical, in 2015, we had a learning curve, and then we had it built, and we raised friends and family funding. We put money in ourselves, which a VC or investor is always going to want to see that you have skin in the game, so you got to put some money in yourself, and then go tap your networks to see if you can raise some money that way, get the thing built, get the market, like the Chris Moody, I'm going to keep referring to him, understand who your customer is, like to the T, and then go out and raise money. So from 2014 and now in 2018, I'm just going to get, money.
And that does seem like a danger point, that it seems like we're counting success as, can you raise venture capital instead of building a really good business.
That's right.
And sometimes you don't actually have to have the venture capital if you build a really good product and sell it, right?
Ask Tony.
I encourage people to get the VC. I actually would encourage people, if you can raise VC, do it. Mm-hmm. As faster is better in most cases. Mm-hmm. But a thing I'll say about ideas is everybody's got ideas. Ideas are really cheap. Everybody in this audience, everybody has an idea. It's just you got to do it. That's where the value creation happens. It's not about the idea, it's about execution.
Yeah, entrepreneurship is not about getting a new job. I mean, that's the problem, is that if you are looking for another source of income to go out and advance your idea, that's very different than real entrepreneurship.
Got time for one more question. Top, oh, I'm sorry. Can shout it out, please. We got one of our students. First of all, tell your name and what school you attend, please. Kiera, and where do you attend? Irwin Middle School. All right, what's your question? Oh, I love that. So what advice do you have for young innovators like them?
Oh, are y'all looking at me? Oh. I I think that some of the best ideas come from life. I think that we're in this stage of entrepreneurship where the next wave of companies are going to be created by people who see a problem in their own life, experience it, and then grow and build from there, because we're entering this space in the internet of everything. Like, we're getting to a place where, I mean, you can call a car on your phone, you can get groceries on your phone, you can optimize your networking on your phone. So we're in this age of the internet of everything. So you've had technology your whole life, which is something so amazing. So I think really just looking around you and thinking, bless you, what can you make, what could technology do to make something easier for you? And just keeping that in the back of your mind always. I find that people say this often, actually, like, women usually create products that simplify life because we're very busy. So think about, as you're going to school, work, play, watching your parents, think about something that can make your life easier, and if other people have that problem as well.
I would say, just to add to that, remember that you were bold enough to ask that question here today in front of a room full of people. Because that boldness that you have will be questioned at some point. There will be something, there will be some event, someone who may explicitly or implicitly tell you that your ideas aren't worthy or that you don't matter, but you do. And you have the boldness to ask that question here because you are an innovator, and you can't stop believing that no matter what you confront.
If you had a mic, you could have dropped it. You do not. I think that's it. Give our panelists one more round of applause, please.